I'm Kevin Davis, and this is the Catholic Family Podcast. And thank you again for joining the show. I'm very happy to have an interview today with a Catholic apologist, a man that I think many people have seen the name, that they've seen his name floating around the state of a contest universe, the Catholic sphere. And Steven Speray is here to join us to talk about his life, the way he found the traditional Catholic faith, why he defends the traditional Catholic faith, and perhaps we'll talk about a few of the books he's written and maybe some of his current projects as well. So, Stephen, I really appreciate it. I know you have a really busy life. You got a lot going on. So I seriously appreciate you coming on and giving us a few minutes of your time. And let's just start. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about who you are. And again, like I said, how you found your way to what you're doing now and defending the Catholic Church.
Well, I was brought up a Novus Ordo Catholic. As far as I understood it, I was a Catholic, and we went to church. And my family was they took care of the church. So the priest would come over and have dinner with us. We were a pretty good Catholic family as far as understood through the Novus Ordo world. And I was always proud to be Catholic because I went to a school that was mostly Protestant. There's maybe literally a handful of us, and we viewed the Protestants as we've always viewed them. They're lost souls that they don't have the truth, and they need to be Catholic to be saved ultimately. And that's how we saw it. That's how we viewed it. And I would do what I could to defend the Catholic religion anytime it was attacked, and it was attacked quite often, even as a child. So,
you mentioned before that when you were a kid, you got fish to be served on Fridays, right, during Lent. That's pretty cool.
First, second grade, I went in and say, "Listen, what about us Catholics? We can't eat meat on Fridays," and this is during Lent, and sure enough, they start serving fish for us, and they've been serving fish ever since, at least as long as I went to school there. I don't know what is going on there now, but
you may need to go back and knock on the door and say, "Hey, double check." Like, "Hey, this started back when I was in first grade. You better keep it up."
Well, 20 years ago, I was invited to give some talks in the school. So I had a younger brother that went to school there, and he's like 15 years younger than me, and they invited me to talk about the Catholic Church and the history of it. And I got a chance to defend the faith and explain what Catholics believe in the school. And not only the local school that I went to, but the school in the town that I live in as well. So 2 different high schools I got to go in and talk. And I did that several times.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Is that something that how did they know? I mean, did they know you as a public figure to be able to know that you could do that, or how did they know that?
Well, I was working as a landscaper at the nursing home. It's a Novus Ordo, but it's a Catholic nursing home, and they had these kids come in to help out. And I'm always talking about the Catholic religion. It doesn't matter where I'm at or what I'm doing. And one of the guys there said, we've been talking about the church in our history class, and the teacher he's pretty anti-Catholic. He doesn't have anything nice to say about you. And so as the day went on, I'd explain more and more what we believed and answered some of those questions. And that boy asked his teacher if I could come in and he could challenge me in his class and see if he could deal with it. And the teacher obliged and had me come in, and we become friends. Actually, the teacher and I have become friends after that. But he got a lesson and found out that the Catholic Church isn't what he thought it was, and we don't believe what he thought we believed. And he was a Methodist, or he probably still is a Methodist, but he knows that we don't worship the Virgin Mary, and he understands purgatory a little better, and he understands where we understand these things from the Bible.
And so, how did you find your way to being an apologist? I mean, what were the steps that led you to be able to defend the faith in front of a school teacher or in front of anybody? What brought you there?
Well, like I told you earlier, I was getting my hair cut, and we had a priest that a true priest who was retiring, and we were talking about it, and he was a well-known figure in the community. And there was another gentleman there who was a Protestant minister. And when he heard us talking about the Catholic Church, he decided to attack me in front of everybody and attack Rome. He knew where to go. He attacked the papacy and Peter. And at that time, I was pretty ignorant. I didn't know the faith that well, didn't know the history as well as I thought I did. And he made me look pretty foolish. And after that, I said, that will never happen again. And I started reading. I read every book I could get my hands on. And I learned, and I didn't just learn the Catholic religion. I started studying the Protestant religions. I picked up all their books, and I wanted to know what they believe and why they believe them. Where do they come from? And so that anytime anybody challenged me, I would know the answers.
And when you did that, you were never swayed? There was never any temptation to become a Protestant?
Oh, no, never. So it just made me mad that I was so stupid. I didn't know how to answer. That really, really got to me. And, none of us like to be made foolish in public, especially about our religion. So, and I was a proud Catholic. Novus Ordo, I didn't think of myself as Novus Ordo. I thought of myself as a Catholic. And
Sure.
We're the historic religion, and our faith comes from Jesus Christ. And if you're not a Catholic, then you're lost. That's how we see it. That's how I've always viewed it. So anyway,
from there, I mean, how did all this study lead you to tradition, or how did you decide Vatican II was a mess, and etc.?
Well, that took years.
Yeah.
So this all took place, 35 years ago or something, so a long time ago. And the more I studied the religion, the more you discover things. And what's interesting about sedevacantism is that, if you're brought up a Novus Ordo, if you're not willing to consider the possibility that it's true or what we're saying is true, you're not going to go there. It's like this with everything. It's like this. I was like this about Ford and Chevy. I was a Chevy guy, and if you told me Ford's just as good, I said, no, it's Ford's junk. I'm a Chevy guy. And even though my Chevys are breaking down, and I've got electrical issues, and I've gone through every Chevy I've had problems, I'm not going to believe Ford's it's just as good. It's one of those things. But once you consider the possibility, hey, Ford might just be good or better, well, then it's the same way it's just the way it is with everything, sports, whatever it is. So you have to consider, what are we saying? Is it possible that what we're saying is true? And if you're not willing to say that, then you're not going to go there. It doesn't matter what facts, what arguments. You have to consider maybe what they're saying is right.
And so what was it that made you think, what was the point where, like, oh, this could be? Was there an aha moment, or?
Well, I never heard of sedevacantism or never even thought about it.
Okay.
What actually got me, what happened is that there's a Novus Ordo apologist, Dr. Robert Sungenis, and I picked up his books, and I used to listen to him, and I have just an utmost respect for this gentleman because he's so intelligent. He knows the Bible inside and out, and he can defend. He's probably the premier apologist in the world, as far as I'm concerned. He's that good. And he was the one that got this idea that he started talking about geocentrism versus heliocentrism. And, I've never even considered, well, is geocentrism even true? But when you start hearing these arguments that he laid out, and like, wow, this is pretty neat. And you start to open your mind. You start thinking, you start thinking outside the box a little bit. And as soon as you consider the possibility that, hey, maybe the earth doesn't move, then you think, well, what else have they told us that's not true? And then everything starts opening up. I'm not saying that geocentrism is true per se, but it's fascinating, and it at least gets you to start thinking about things. And what happened was, I stumbled upon this document, Auctorum Fide, which was written by Pope Pius VI. And in that document, it talks about how our practices in the church are perfect. There's nothing wrong with them. And at the time that I discovered this document, I was having a real problem with women reading from as lectors, and altar girls I've always had a problem with that. I said, something's not right. But I thought, it's just, but it never dawned on me that there's nothing wrong with it. The church can't have these kinds of problems. And so when I saw that document, Auctorium Vitae, like, oh my gosh, something's not right. So, and then of course the Diamond Brothers were pretty big at the time. They had their paperwork was going out, and I was picking up that stuff. I got Robertson Genis, and I'm reading his stuff, and it's all it literally all comes at the same time. So I'm stumbled upon all these things at the same time. It didn't take me long for me to realize that, John Paul II is not the Pope. It didn't take me years or months. It took me a week, maybe.
Wow. So once that the light bulb of almost thinking outside the box or thinking that it's worth looking into, then it was a pretty quick development.
Yeah, and once I loved John Paul II at the time. I thought he was the greatest Pope ever. I had a picture of him everywhere in my house. He even wrote me a letter. So wow. I just thought the world of him. But then when I didn't know about the sissy events, EWTN, they don't talk about all this craziness that he had done. But when you start seeing things with him, like with pagan stoles on, practicing Zoroastrianism and inviting the world's pagan leaders to pray to their gods for world peace, and you just can't believe it. And I said, well, he can't be Pope. This is just not Catholic. And it tore me up pretty bad. I remember literally going a week without eating, sleeping, crying, because it's like everything is just the whole foundation has been ripped out from you.
Sure. Did you doubt? I mean, did you doubt the Catholic Church then? I imagine. I mean, if the man you believe to be Pope seems to not be a good Pope, that must be pretty tough to swallow.
Well, I still didn't doubt the Catholic Church. I just thought something's wrong.
Okay.
It's like Jesus, I'll never give up on Christ. It's just one of those things. Something's not right, but you just can't put your finger on it. And I was completely unaware to the state of a conscience out there. I didn't even know the word. I didn't realize there was people out there. Of course, the Diamond Brothers, like I said, I knew them because of them. I was able to. I heard of the word and figured it all out through them. So. And I had spoken to them on the phone. I talked to Dr. Robertson Genis on the phone. I used to call these people, and then I discovered Father Cicada, and I remember calling him on the phone and talking to him. And what am I supposed to do here? I'm in the Lexington, Kentucky area. Can I go to a Novus Ordo priest if he's a valid priest? Can I go to his confession? I remember asking Cicada that, and so. Still, I'm not aware exactly what I should, what am I supposed to do?
Right. Yeah. I mean, right. It's tough. And I mean, as we see, all the different groups have a hard time. There's a lot of gray area in sedevacantism because we don't have an authority, right? We don't have a Pope. There's a lot of things that haven't yet been decided. And that is a lot of the issue that makes people kind of afraid of it, I think, right? That they're afraid of, this is kind of, maybe some people think it's a cult. These are kind of weirdos, or, they're always fighting. They don't have all of the answers. It's like, well, I mean, to me, and I'm a cradle sede, so it's easy for me to say, but I mean, of course we don't have the answers because we don't have a hierarchy at the moment. And of course that's not a good situation, but we didn't make the situation, right? It just, that is what the situation is.
That's right. Well, I used to go to mass every day. I went to daily mass, did that for 15 years. Even when I was in the Navy, I would skip lunch. I'd run across the base, hear mass, and go back to school. I was in schools for a couple of years in the Navy, but I went to mass every day. And when you come to the conclusion that this is not Catholic, it's pretty devastating. And even when I determined that John Paul II wasn't Pope, I would go to the Latin Mass. So I was going to the indult for a while. It still hadn't clicked on me. I remember we would drive all the way to Louisville, and that's a good hour and a half from our house. And I was, one morning, I worked third shift, and one morning when we were headed up to Louisville for mass, my wife was driving because I worked all night and I was tired, but I'd be reading. And I remember reading Destruction of Christian Tradition by Father Kumaswamy. And as I'm reading the book, and I've read it several times, as I'm reading this book, by the time we get to Louisville, I looked at my wife and said, why are we here? Why are we worshiping in an indult? None of these people believe what we believe. And we walked in the church, we knelt down, and she looked at me. She goes, "You want to go?" I said, "Let's get out of here." And that was it.
Wow.
We were done with adult forever. We turned, and I mean, again, hour and a half down there, hour and a half back. We didn't even go. That was it. Once we made that, that was it's just one more line that you cross, and you realize, there's certain things you just can't do as a Catholic. And
can you mention the name of the book again?
The Destruction of Christian Tradition by Rama Kumaswamy.
Okay, interesting.
It was it's a great book.
And is that referring to Vatican II, or what's that referring to?
It is. It's referring to all. It's referring to all the errors of Vatican II, the new Mass, the rite of Holy Order. In chapter, I want to say it's chapter 14, if my memory serves me correct. He has a whole chapter on why the Holy Orders is doubtful.
Okay.
He's one of the first to really show that and explain that.
And was he then? He was obviously then a traditional priest.
He was
Catholic priest.
I think he's a little different because I think he was married. He was married, and he ended up getting ordained anyway. So I don't know how that all worked. I think he wrote a paper on his defense of his ordination, and it's been a long time since I've read that. But you can probably go online and find it. If not, I'm sure I got it in my file somewhere. Got it.
But the book still obviously must be pretty life-changing, as you say, to be able to go from. I mean, because that's the logical step, right? That you go from the Novus Ordo saying, okay, we want tradition, we want the Latin Mass, and then you go to Latin Mass, and then some people, at least most don't, but some say, okay, is this enough? Is the Latin Mass the final answer? And obviously, that's something that you came to the conclusion that it's not the only answer.
Right, and that priest was actually a valid priest too. His Father Schimbeckler. I remember him very well. He gave my daughter her first communion because that's where we were going there for a while. And I'd talked to him about it, and I had a problem with the new Mass. Was it even valid? And the whole, for all and for many, and that argument there. And he thought that it was valid, but he had problems with John Paul II. I remember he liked Cardinal Renzi and was like, I hope we get him for the next pope. I remember him having problems with John Paul II, and but he was one of those. I guess you look now as a recognizing resistor, although I'm not sure if that was something they thought of at the time. I mean, this is a good 20 years ago.
Right. I mean, these situations have changed so much. I mean, you mentioned earlier that a lot of these things just weren't even known. I mean, JP2 and worshiping Buddha, and I mean, you just didn't have the internet like you do now, right? These things weren't published, and so my generation has this hindsight ability that we can say, what were these guys doing? Kind of like, come on. I mean, this is so obvious, and we have the videos now all published on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, and at the time, I think it's really easy to forget that that's just not how it worked. This information was not spread within a millisecond like it is now, and so it was a much more difficult decision. I always kind of defend Archbishop Lefebvre because he's another one that I don't think he did everything right, obviously in hindsight, but boy, that's tough when you're in the moment, when you're in the actual situation at the time, and it's fresh from these people that he grew up with in the faith, and he has to admit, it's not the church, or it is the church. I mean, it's brutal. It's so tough. I don't blame anybody back 20, 30 years ago that couldn't easily make the decision. Now either, but now is a little bit easier because you have the info.
What Father Science E. Arriaga, who was a Mexican priest, he wrote that book, The New Montanian Church. I would consider him he's a real hero, because you've heard Athanasius against the world.
Mm-hmm.
When Arianism was going around, Athanasius. Well, the world was much smaller in Athanasius' day. Father E. Arriaga, he really was him against the world. He was standing up against Paul VI at the time, and you're talking about 1970.
Wow.
And you don't have the assist events, you don't have all the nonsense that you see today, but he saw it just as clear as a bell then in his day, and it's an amazing thing that he stood up against it. He was excommunicated by Paul VI. I think Bishop Carmona said, "Oh, blessed excommunication!" It's a badge of honor to be called out, and he stood up against all of them. And this priest had 3 doctorates. He had a doctorate in sacred theology, canon law, and philosophy. So he had 3 doctorates, He knew his stuff. And if you've not read that book, I think it's online, the New Montanian Church. He gets into some big details of Paul VI, and of course it just gets worse, after he leaves the office, and you get the other guys in there. I think John Paul II was probably the most damaging of all, because he was in there so long and he was so charismatic, and he was just a lovable man, and you buy into what he was feeding you.
And do you think he was he just a true saint of a false church, or was he an actor? I know this is totally personal opinion, but I mean, what do you think he really believed it, or was he just kind of a good showman?
I think he probably really believed in it. I think he's a modernist. I think, and he believed in his modernism. I think all the Vatican II popes were modernists, and they believed what they were doing. He was an actor, by the way. John Paul II was an actor,
right.
But I don't think he was acting.
He
was just very charismatic, and he believed what he was doing was right. But
I think it's pretty interesting when you see these quotes from him or from Ratzinger, where I should say Father Ratzinger, where they say things like, the traditions of the church have fallen, or these quotes that make it sound like they were the bastions of the faith and tradition. It's like, come on, you were right there writing the documents in Vatican II, and it's just in JP2 as well, as you say, they were full blown modernists, and so even though they had the charisma, and I guess compared to Bergoglio, they are, I suppose, more conservative, but I mean, anyone compared to him is conservative. And so I think that you see, their beliefs are clearly against what the Catholic Church taught for 2,000 years. And I think it's hard for people to swallow. I mean, is that something, again, was that when you started to learn about JP2, how did you make that, I guess, again, I mean, was that leaving the indult to just say, okay, all of it is bad since Vatican II? I mean, you made the decision in one morning, but was that something that took a while to come to grips with?
Well, it's one thing to recognize that you got a fake pope, but it's more than that. It's a fake religion. It's a counterfeit religion. So you got these R&R guys that are trying to defend why the whole pope heretic question. It's gone way past that. You got a whole religion that's teaching heresy. So it's not just a pope question, because the pope is so connected to the religion. If you got a fake pope, you're ultimately going to have a fake religion. If they do what we've had anti-popes in the past, but they weren't like anti-Catholics. These Vatican II guys are anti-Catholics, and they've changed their religion accordingly. I mean, the Novus Ordo religion is anti-Catholic. It's not just not Catholic. It's anti. It goes against what we believe. They recognize false religions as part of the one Church of Christ. They look at the Eastern Orthodox as part of the one church. Protestants, if you read the joint declaration on the Lutherans, you see the last paragraph. The church is divided, and they're part of the church. The Lutherans, of course, they venerate Luther, and you see I've written some stuff. The whole religion is Protestant in a sense. It's the idea that all these false religions make up the one Church of Christ is about as heretical as it gets. And you see that in Vatican II. So when you see Bergoglio talking about how the Lutherans have the true faith in Christ and they're members of the mystical body of Christ, and you think, well, he's more liberal. They've been teaching this since Vatican II. I mean, he's not really saying anything different. He's just, actually, Bergoglio is just more open as to what they've always taught. I think the other guys have been more clever, but I think Bergoglio is just telling you, hey, this is what Vatican II is teaching, and he's showing it very clearly.
Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, really, it's all in the news, and you have all the headlines of, oh, he's saying this, and as you say, it's all been said and done before. I mean, it's pretty much in the documents of the council, and you really see, if you really look into it really briefly, you see a direct split of religion. It's totally different doctrine and dogma and belief. I mean, it's as you say, it's the belief of it's all good. Every religion can get you to heaven, which in my mind, just practically, just logically, doesn't that mean, I mean, if you believe all religions are good, then yours can't be, right? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, I mean, then why have a religion? You can get to heaven somehow, just be good or go worship Buddha one day and Hindu gods the next, and it's all fine. It just, even practically, it doesn't make sense. And this is exactly why you see the Novus Ordo Church has shrunk by, I don't know, what is it now, 80% or something in the last 60 years, because nobody buys it, or very few people buy it. They don't actually believe that you can get to heaven through all these means, and you've seen it by its fruits.
Well, if you're going to be a Protestant religion, that's what the Novus Ordo has ultimately become, a Protestant religion. Well, you're not going to do it better than they do it. So might as well be a Protestant. And that's what people do. They leave and they become Protestants because, well, why would you belong to a church that's more strict and you got to follow these rules? And when you can have this, you can just go to a Protestant religion where it's much more free and open, and you're going to go to heaven anyway because, you got this relationship with Jesus and you're good. Why go through all these sacraments and all these rules, and you got to fast, and you got to fast twice a year in the Novus Ordo religion. We just got off of 6 weeks of fasting, and they do it twice.
Right.
It's the sacredness is gone. So they've lost so many graces. We've lost all their graces, and of course.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to put you on the spot here. I want to see how you do. I'm going to give you a test. So, what's your sales pitch? Let's say to a Protestant, because you've defended this for a while. What's your elevator pitch? And you'll say 30 seconds to a minute. What is your elevator pitch for the Catholic faith? Why is it true?
Oh, well, history. If you know your history, you'll find out that it's the only church that you'll find in every generation. Christ said the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. This is not a promise per se. It's part of the nature of the church. It's not going to be destroyed. If you were to live in, say, the 9th century, what church would you belong? The Baptist church didn't exist until the 1609. What about the Lutherans? Well, that was a priest that started that in the 1500s. So what church would you have belonged to? There's only, in the 9th century, you only got, a few options. And the heretics in that day were pretty out there. So it's the Catholic Church. It's the church you find in every generation. If you read the church fathers, and you see that they all believed in purgatory, they believed in the 7 sacraments, they believed in the papacy, they had veneration of Our Lady, and so on and so forth. And you see that the Catholic religion is the church of history. So it makes no sense that the church would be wrong for 1,500 years, and then you got some Catholic priest that comes out and say, hey, I've got it right. This is the way it's supposed to be. And the church has been wrong for 1,500 years. That's ultimately what he's saying. And
right.
And people that went farther than that, didn't think he went far enough.
No, exactly. And I think it's amazing that they always they try to sneak in. Oh yeah, well, Luther was just trying to reform things. He was trying to fix the scandals of the money spending and the indulgences, and they don't mention that. Well, no, he completely changed many of the entire ideas of the faith. I mean, saying the faith alone, you don't have to do anything good. I mean, come on, it's such a joke when they try to act like, no, he was just trying to fix a few things. It's like, are you serious? He completely changed some of the primary dogmas and doctrines of the faith, and it's kind of a joke. And we promoted a movie. I don't know if you've seen it, done by a Polish group called Martin Luther and the Partisan Revolution. It's really fantastic, and it really shows exactly who Luther was, where he came from, and what religion he founded. And it shows a lot of our evils today can be traced back to the foundation of the Lutheran Protestant Church.
Well, did they show Luther falling in love with a nun, and he was looking for a way out? And that, I mean, he was looking for a way out of the church. He needed to get out of the priesthood. He needed to get married to this lady, which he did, right?
Yep. Kidnapped her. he kidnapped her out of a convent, and said, okay, she's my wife now. No, it's a fantastic documentary. I'll link it in this episode. Really, really good for you or anyone watching this. Really fantastic. If you have any doubts about Luther, you watch this video and you will at least question the man who founded this religion. It's bonkers, crazy.
And it looked like he committed suicide in the end too. So you can go
Yep.
online and you can read all about that, how they lied about his death and when he got drunk and hung himself. So
I mean, the guy says, he's quoted as saying that some of his inspirations came from the devil. He said that. Luther said that. That's not me saying it. The guy said it. It's written down from a quote, from people who were there. And so it's really incredible. I mean, just to see it. And again, I'm kind of going off topic, but it is, learn. Don't just say, hey, the Protestant religion is it was just a reformation of the Catholic Church without actually having looked into what it actually was. I mean, well, who was Luther? What was he actually doing? And I think it's unfair, and it's kind of cheap, honestly, of Protestants. What is your faith? Where did it come from? I've had this with Mormons. I've had Mormon friends, and they'll tell me that their faith is the truth, and I'm like, okay, that's nice. So tell me about it. Well, my elders, it's like, no, where did it come from? It's like, who founded your faith? And you look into Mormonism, and it's this lunatic who founded it back, what was it, in 1860 something, and it was so crazy he got kicked out of America and had to go up to Utah. so anyway, I mean, it's just, the more you dig into these things, the more you find most of them are founded by degenerates almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't have any love for Protestantism. I can tell you that right now. And I probably hate it more now than I've ever hated it. And but I see it clearly in the Vatican II religion. And I try. That's one of my. That's why I go after all my Novus Ordo family and friends. I try to get to that point because they don't like Protestants either. They don't like Protestantism, so they don't like it when you can show what you see where you have this institution narrative in your new mass. Well, that came from Lutheranism. It's not part of Catholicism, and you see how they're venerating Luther in the Vatican, and it's just nuts. And but again, they have to consider the possibility that what we're saying is true. If they're not willing to do that, they're not going to become sedevacantists. They're not going to go there.
And I think that obviously the devil is, I don't know if I froze on my screen. I froze, so I apologize to anyone who can't see me anymore, but hopefully I'll come back here soon. I hope my voice is still okay. I don't know what happened, but hopefully, yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things the devil has done really well in showing that are trying to make the Catholic Church a laughing stock. You bring up all these sex scandals, and you make Bergoglio kind of a clown, and I think it's made it so it brings it a bit closer to Protestantism or to other religions, because it takes away the dignity and the grandeur and the beauty that is and was the Catholic faith. And I think that the devil's done a really good job of lowering what the world sees to be the Catholic Church. I mean, is that something that you think we can try to fix?
I don't think the world's going to be fixed, and I don't think we're coming out of this mess. And that's my personal belief. There's people that think we're going to come out of it, but I think we're in the great apostasy. I think our Lord's right around the corner. That's my opinion, but the world's not going to get fixed. We're spiraling out of control completely.
So do you think that's going to? You don't think there's any possible, not permanent solution, but even temporary, I don't know, gradual incline, or the world kind of coming back to the faith, or kind of seeing God, or groups of, because I do see some movement in the right direction of some of the world turning towards tradition and trying to find at least some form of truth. Do you think that's true, or do you think it's more just headed towards the garbage bin?
I think we're going to hell in a handbasket. To put it bluntly. And
yeah.
I mean, there are going to be people that there are definitely people out there that are good-willed, and we got to help them find the way. But we're at this moment where, we're at the crossroads. They got to find it, and they got to join us, and they got to get the sacraments and have the faith, and they got to start living right. All of us need to. We need to. I posted an article called "When the Church and World Are One," and I wrote that for myself as much as anybody, because, as Catholics, we need to be more humble, and we need to really focus on Jesus in every aspect of our lives. I'm in traffic, and I am one of my biggest problems in life is my impatience, and I get upset. Really, I have a temper, and I get upset, but that's the world. So I'm letting the world get to me. I'm letting the world evangelize me. And so here in the last few weeks, it's focusing on Jesus and thinking about Jesus. And I do the Jesus prayer over and over again. And we need to do penance, and we need to make sacrifices, and we better get ourselves right, because Judgment Day is coming, and you want to be ready.
And so Judgment Day is coming. If that's the truth, you still obviously think that apostolizing or evangelizing, what's the word? That trying to spread the good word is worth it, because you're still writing articles in defense of the faith. I mean, is that
Absolutely
dire, I suppose?
Well, listen, we still getting converts.
Yeah.
I got 2 more that I'm expecting to join us.
Cool.
Here this month. I mean, they're really close. One of them's a Protestant even. I think that they're going to join us. So there are people out there. We just got to reach them, and you can't give up. You just can't give up on people. We don't know what what he has in mind and what he plans, but we can't stop. We got to keep going and doing the best that we can. We got to get as many people into the faith as we can, and it's a battle, and we got to fight to the end.
And is that something you kind of work on a person by person basis? I mean, how do you try to convert people? I mean, again, I know you write books, you write articles, which I'll definitely link to this as well. I know you've written a lot in defense of sedevacantism and other related issues, I suppose. I mean, do you do that with people you meet every day? I mean, how do you try to bring people to the faith?
Well, I do. We do every now and then when I got time. I'll schedule an appointment with the Novus Ordo priest, and I'll sit down and I'll talk to him for an hour or two, and I lay it out. I mean, I've got a friend who's a Novus Ordo priest, and it's been a couple years ago, but I sat down and talked to him, and listen, he sees what I'm saying. He acknowledges that what we're saying is true, but he said, "Listen, I've been here. I'm not going to the seminary again. It's just too hard. He's not doing it." So I know it's a pathetic excuse, but he knows what we're saying is true, but he's not going to start over. He's gone through the seminary. He's got his job and he's got his position. He's not going to join us. It's going to cost him everything.
Yeah.
So my priest, Father Oswald, he was a Novus Ordo priest, and he went to the seminary again. He got conditionally reordained, and the priest travels 7 states a month to do mass.
Whoa.
Father Oswald is, I've never met a finer priest.
He's a great priest. Yeah,
absolutely. He's one of the best I've ever encountered.
That's great. No, and that's an amazing thing. It's great you bring that up, because I think it's talk about the heroism, of our priests these days. I mean, the true heroes of our time, and likely, God willing, are the saints of our time. And these priests that they do superhuman things to bring people to faith and bring people to sacraments. And I mean, we can't take that for granted. I mean, that's such a good point, that we need to always make sure we pray for them. And just the amount of driving they must do to bring these sacraments is just, it's otherworldly. It's superhuman, I think. And it never gets enough credit. I think it only does when you talk to the priest and really hear their schedule. And it's like, oh man, this is incredible. He's living supernaturally. That's what he's doing. Right. And when you're around him, here's what's amazing. When you go to mass and you're around him, you feel closer to Jesus. The man really is. I mean, he's a very saintly priest. And when you leave mass, it's not like it was. It's not like it used to be. You feel like you've encountered Christ with him, not just with the sacraments, but he is another Christ. He really is another Christ. And that rubs off, and we want to be the same way. We want to. So every time I come in contact with people, I'm usually talking about the faith some way, somehow. I try to sow seeds and see where people, if they're interested and they want to hear it, and then I'll continue on and talk more. And I mean, I never get tired of talking about the Catholic religion. And how do you get to that point? And I imagine you probably have a personality that works that way too. But how do you get to the point, comfort-wise, with the faith? And I mean, literally, what do you do to reach a point where you can feel comfortable talking to someone about the Catholic faith and not feeling like you're going to make a mistake or not going to know. Because I think I really think most people, they don't bring it up. They don't want to because they're not quite confident enough.
Well, trial and error.
Yeah.
I how many times I engaged in debates, one-on-one debates with Protestants, and they come up with these arguments and you've never heard them before. How do you answer them? Well, you learn the more you do it, the more you learn. And when I do these like when I'm going through Sal and Cisco's book and I'm answering, they're coming up with stuff that you may have never heard before, and so you're thinking about it, and when you hear it and you write it down, and that's more information in your head. And when you do this over and over again with whatever it might be, the information it gets in your head until you know it very well, and the more you know something, the more comfortable you're going to be with it. So it's funny. I thought 20 years ago I thought I was pretty sharp. Looking back now, like, man, amazingly I was pretty dumb, and I'm sure 20 years from now, if we're still around, I'll look back now and think, man, you really thought you were something. No, you really didn't know very much. So I'm constantly learning myself. I'm here the other day. I was reading about the Spanish Civil War, and I'm learning about the different factions, and wow, I'm really fascinated by that right now. And Spanish traditionalism.
It's a really interesting topic, right? I've had many small conversations, no deep conversations, but about the nationalism, I suppose, or whatever you want to call Franco. I mean, it is a really interesting concept, and because it's such a touchy topic of when you get into fascism and nationalism and what's okay and what's not, and I don't know enough about it. Maybe we got to do a show about it. Maybe once you've done enough research on it, because I would love to know more too. Because I think it's a really interesting topic, and because I think it's something we talk often about on the podcast is the proper ways to govern a nation. And honestly, there doesn't seem to really be a good way. But I mean, there are better or worse ways. There's not a perfect way. And I think that the church, backs that up. But I think it is interesting to look at the past and see, I don't know, what has worked better with others, and who has tried to work with the Catholic Church. And boy, in the last 150 years, it's not happened often.
Well, thanks to Vatican II, there are no Catholic nations.
Right.
They destroyed it, and that's something that's not talked about enough, I don't think. Dignitatis, and even Wikipedia talks about how Dignitatis Humanae, it destroyed the Spanish traditionalist. That whole movement, the whole idea, the Catholic state, it ruined it. And this is supposed to be a Catholic council, and it's destroying the Catholic state. I mean,
right.
It's insanity that these apologists can't see this. Like I listen to Patrick Madrid all the time on the radio, kind of hear what people call in and say, and I call in from time to time, but they never take my calls.
You're changing your voice.
No.
This is Steve.
I tell them, listen, my last time I called, I asked them about, Bergoglio talked about how Christ wills the diversity of religion and sex. And now that's been placed in the official acts of the church. So I'd like to know how you can explain that your church now officially teaches heresy. That was my question. They had me on for an hour and a half, and they never took my call.
Wow.
And then they didn't say, I'm sorry, we can't get to you. They just, after the show is over, it's over. I called back with the same question. I told them, listen, I waited an hour and a half. You're not going to keep me on this long again. And they said, oh, no, we're going to get you on. They didn't get me on. So, and it's a legitimate question. I'd like to hear Patrick Madrid answer that question.
Sure. Yeah, you wonder with a lot of these. You wonder with a lot of these Novus Ordo apologists. I mean, I don't think they're bad men. I don't think they most of them don't seem to have ill intentions. Maybe some do, but I think you do wonder sometimes. Like they always say, we're the ones with cognitive dissonance, and it's kind of like I get the opposite feeling sometimes. They're just like they can't, as you've said before, they can't look outside the box. They can't even question that it could possibly be the case that what they think to be the church is not the church. And since that's the case, they have to find some excuse for everything, or just not even look at it. They'll just ignore it.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems is they don't understand infallibility. They think, well, they
Mm-hmm.
aren't teaching infallible, so therefore it can be heretical. And
Right.
that's listen, they can't teach heresy. You can't profess heresy. Infallibility is not doesn't mean that now you can teach heresy and you're okay.
Right.
No, if you're professing heresy, you're not a Catholic. That's how it works. And some of these R&R guys, they know that their popes are professing heresy, but they just then they had come up with this idea. Well, yeah, well they haven't been warned. You don't know if they're pertinacious, and they haven't taught it officially, or they come up with these arguments. Listen, your pope's a heretic, and your church is teaching heresy. It's professing heresy all over the place. It drives me crazy
Right.
sometimes to
Yeah,
deal with it.
they try to overcomplicate it, right?
I've
Yeah.
got family members that are there that you can't reason with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but it's such a, I mean, especially the R&R is such a strange movement because they want to have their cake and eat it too, which obviously is just not, it's just not a Catholic principle, right? I mean, it's like they have no principles. It's like kind of, he's our Pope, but we don't really care. We're not going to listen to him. And that's so against everything traditionally Catholic, right? I mean, the Pope is the head of the church in the mouth of Christ. You can't just pick and choose what you like and don't like. I mean, it seems they just overcomplicate everything. It's really pretty simple, as you said. Is it heresy or is it not? Is he the Pope or is he not? And unfortunately, they just try to make it more complicated, I suppose.
Well, they want to say he's a bad pope. Well,
Right.
no, he doesn't profess the faith. He's not. It's not like he's a bad pope. He's not Catholic. It's like they just can't. They're just not going to go there because they understand where it leads. It leads to sedevacantism. It's anything but sedevacantism. That's what it comes down to.
And do you think, why is that? What is, I understand that sedevacantism is not a pleasant position. It's not a good one because we don't have a pope. Of course, it's not like any sedevacantist is like, yay, I'm so happy to be in this position. But what is it that makes them so afraid to admit that the position is the correct one? What do you think? Why is that?
I think I don't think people like going against the establishment.
Yeah.
You see this with everything, right? And you join us, and there's not many of us, and everybody thinks you're crazy and you're nuts, and you know it just is not very pleasant. And there are some difficulties in sedevacantism and explaining, how could it be this bad? I just mentioned in an article recently that the worst prophecies are not as bad as what we're living in. So it's
Right.
worse than anybody even comprehended. And so I think it's just going against the establishment and standing up. People go along to get along. I'm not like that. So it's not my nature to do that. I like during the home scandemic, you didn't see me wearing a mask. I remember that first day they said, you got to wear a mask in the store. I was the first one in that store without a mask. I was waiting for someone to say something to me because I wasn't going to wear one, and I never did. So but people are scared. It's a fear factor there. I think people are afraid. They don't want to be looked upon as leaving the church. I think my brother, he's afraid of if he joins us, he's left the church. He thinks we've left the church.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which I mean, I understand that. I mean, I understand the idea because, right, we don't follow their church. So in a way, yes, we have left that church. It's coming to the conclusion that, okay, yes, we don't belong to that church. We've left it. But that's because, because they're heretical and they're apostates. They teach everything. Practically half of what they teach is against the Catholic faith. Novus Ordo Watch, if you watch him on Twitter or Facebook, half of his day is spent just quoting the daily quotes of Bergoglio and saying how they're heretical. I mean, it's all the time. He does it once or twice a day, and it just shows you that everything that comes out of his mouth practically is not Catholic. It goes against the traditions of the faith, and I think that for us it's really clear, but obviously for them they just don't. They see it from a different perspective, and I guess that's what we have to try to realize and try to find the best ways, I suppose, to, I don't know, bring them over. And obviously only God's grace is going to do that. They're the ones who have to convert. I think that's a really important thing. But I think that producing good content. I mean, what you do, what Mario does over at Nova Soto Watch. I mean, stuff that gives people that chance, that if God gives them that flicker of grace, that flicker of, okay, you know, maybe, then they can go and you know, hey, Google, you know, what is Sadomasochism, and they can find works from you, from Mario. And I think that's at least a little bit heartwarming, I suppose.
Mario's amazing. I don't know how he does it, because I can't stand to look at them as much as he
Right.
does. A lot of my stuff, you know, like I've gone after Sal and Cisco recently, and I have some different ideas about things, but he's constantly looking at the Nova Soto Church, and he's exposing. He does amazing work. I don't know how he does it, but that would drive me nuts after look at Bergoglio every day and write something about him or show him where every error. That would just, yes, like, it's a dirty job. I guess someone's got to do it. I'm glad.
Totally. That's exactly right. Thank goodness for the Marios of the world. That is absolutely.
There's only one Mario in the world.
That is a good point. That is a good point. Thank you, Mario. If you're watching this, we appreciate you, and we appreciate anyone sticking through this. Even though my screen just froze, I have no idea what happened, but I don't want to reboot and kick off the whole thing. At least my face is not too crazy in the frozen screen. It could have been worse. It's not good either, but apologies for that. At least we still have Steven here. He's still with us, and his face looks fine. How do people find your material? I mean, and I know again that you've written a couple books. Are those still purchasable, or where can people find those?
Sure, you can go to lulu.com and you can find all of them there. If you type my name in, you'll go to lulu.com and type my name, and you'll find all my books.
Okay.
I wrote all those a long time ago, and you know, when I look back and look at some of those books, I think, man, I'm not crazy about the writing. The information's fantastic, but the writing skills, you know, I need a little. Looking back, you know, because you improve your writing as you go.
Sure.
And, although I'm really happy with Papal Anomalies, that's probably my favorite book. After Pius XII, The Deluge, it's just a little booklet that kind of gives you, it's how to articulate Sadomasochism, and how do you talk to your family and friends and get them to see what we're saying. And the whole idea behind the book, I teach you how to do it in the book. Basically, I give you the information, all the information you'll need, and it's basically, you don't tell them, you make them tell you. You make them tell you what you're supposed to believe. You make them tell you that Francis is not the Pope. You don't tell them.
Interesting. I like it.
It has worked. It has, and we've got there's a few converts that come. You get them to see, and they. Now again, there are people that see it. They're just not going to go there. They don't want to. They won't answer the questions. That's another thing. If someone asks me a question, I answer every single question someone asks me, but you won't find that with the other side. You know,
right.
They don't answer in fact, they don't answer most questions.
Yeah.
And but I answer every single question. And if I don't know the answer, you know, I'll just tell them I don't know. I'll look it up. I haven't had that problem. The nice thing is the internet, I can look stuff up and think about it and find the resources or what have you. But sometimes you may not know the answer off the top of your head. There's a lot of information out there.
Sure. And where are you publishing your articles now?
You can go to catholictopgun.com, stevenspeary.com. You can go either way, and you can find all my stuff there. I've got some interesting ideas about things that not thought of very often, like the Antichrist. I've got my position on women and holding public office is not very popular, but
okay.
But it's my pet peeve, actually. It's the one thing that irritates me the most, is this idea of women having the same authority as men. And if you look at the history of the church, you'll see that is not the way it's supposed to be. And notice also, it's no coincidence that as you see the Vatican II church, you know, emerge in the 20th century. It's the same time everything else is happening, right?
Right.
All the evils of the world are starting to come around, and now look at how bad things are today. And what do you see? Well, not only is abortion high and homosexuality and this so-called transgenderism, but You got women, they're running everything. They're in every office around the country, and it's praised as, hey, women have finally made it, but it's actually not the way it's supposed to be. They've turned creation on its head. That's what's happened. It's not, if you read 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 12 and 13, you'll see that St. Paul is actually using a natural law argument, and he's saying that it's because Adam was formed first, and that transcends all culture. So you can't say, well, it's a culture thing. No, it's not a cultural thing. It's built into creation. So I've gotten, I think, 3 articles on feminism, and I have a neat idea that it may be the very first sin. It's the sin of Eve. It's just an idea, but I've got it out there. You want to say feminism, the first sin, ? And read that. See what you think. It's an idea that, and the reason why I wrote that was because my daughter was asking me, when do you think feminism first came into the world? And as I started thinking about it, the first thing that came to my mind was Eve. But then I thought, let's think about this for a second. Let's play around with this idea, and wow, it's pretty neat. So
that is really intriguing.
Check it out.
No, absolutely. No, that's awesome. It's a great thing that I think, talking to you right now, that except for the connection issues, that I feel like you and I could have a podcast once a week easy and talk about just about anything. I know one thing that you've covered in detail is Feeneyism, which to me is that's a really big topic, because as we both know, it's a big issue among those who look at Sedevacantist contests from the outside and on social media from the inside. They're pretty nasty, and unfortunately they really give Sedevacantism a bad name at many points, I think. And on the other side, they create really, really good content. We've talked about that a lot recently, that the Diamond Brothers are really good content creators, and that's just the fact of it. They create really good videos, and they spend a lot of time and probably money on it. And unfortunately, all this good content leads you into a really, really drastic error and heresy. But maybe that's something that you and I would love to have you on again sometime to talk about that, or gee whiz, talk about feminism. That sounds fantastic, because you're so right. I'm totally with you. And the whole flip flopping of the destruction of the family unit, the Catholic family unit, is one of the biggest issues in our world today. Absolutely.
Well, as far as Feeneyism is concerned, what the Diamond Brothers and all Feeneyites do is they make the same mistake as the R&R guys, and that is they believe the church can be heretical. That's ultimately what they're saying, and they argue that baptism, desire, and blood are heretical propositions. And if it's heretical, then why are you seeing it being presented everywhere, and why hasn't the church stamped it out? And when you point to, well, this saint taught it, this saint, oh, well, they're just material heretics. Well, wait a second. The problem with that idea is, if you're going to use that argument, then why can't you say that about the modernists? Why aren't they material heretics? But they read Trent. They know what it meant. They read the Bible and see what Jesus said. And so how could they teach this? It's because this is the way the church has always taught it. And they just think the church is not only promulgated heresy, but it teaches it by law. It's in the catechism. Ultimately, the church is heretical. That's what they're saying. If baptism of desire and blood are heresies, then the church is heretical, because it's everywhere.
Right.
And that's blasphemy.
Right.
So
it was condemned by Pius XII, correct? Or he was. Father Feeney was condemned by Pius XII.
Right. The 1949 letter. I think he was called into Rome to give an answer. And if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I've looked into this, but I don't think he trusted anybody. So he had a distrust. By the way, Father Feeney is not a good guy. If you go to Introibo's website, he's got a whole article on how they were taking children, and they're doing all kinds of bad things. He's a very bad man, and very evil. So it goes way beyond Feeneyism. But as far as Feeney is concerned, I don't think he trusted anybody, and he just wanted to do his thing. And it's funny that he actually believed in a baptism of desire. He just didn't believe that those individuals go to heaven. He said they didn't go to hell, but they don't go to heaven. So when asked where such individuals go, he said, well, I don't know. So
okay, interesting.
Interesting
topic.
There's a lot to that topic too.
Oh, no question about it. Yeah, I think people have literally written books on it, right? I know there's a couple defending, the baptism of desire and blood. I mean, the counter Crawford. I haven't read it, but unfortunately, I even know Reverend Crawford and was friends with him for a time. So that it's a particularly close, near and dear to my heart, I suppose you could say. So that would be. I would love to do a full podcast on that sometime, maybe if you have time. I know again you're super busy, and but I really appreciate it. I mean, I think it's been a really nice time to get to know you a little bit. Again, like with Mario, I told Mario before, it's like the podcast waves, the airwaves are always open. So if that's something that you ever have something you want to talk about, come on and talk about. I'm sure I would love to be in touch with you again and say, hey, let's talk about feminism. Let's talk about something else. I mean, I'd love to pitch your books. I mean, I think that I think that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. I agree with you, but I do think as it does, there are people that start to wake up and see that, and they're looking for information. They're looking for good material, good books, good articles, good podcasts. And I think that we as traditional Catholics who create content need to do everything we possibly can to, I don't know if promotes the word, but to share this other good content. And so that's, I hope that you, maybe I can have you and Mario on at the same time. Now that would be fantastic.
Well, that'd be great too. I was going to tell you, we want to make the sheep herd as big as possible, right? So when Jesus comes, he's gonna put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. So we want his right side to be as full as possible. So
exactly.
We got to get as many people over onto our side as possible. And there are Catholics that are not going to be on his right side.
Right.
I have this Fewness of the Saved article, and it doesn't even look good for Catholics. A lot of them aren't living right, and they're going to be in the goat side.
Yep.
And that's not going to be a good thing for them. So we want to make sure that we're not goats, right? We want to make sure we're on the sheep as well. So every time we hammer these truths and we tell people how to live, we want to make sure that, we are doing it first, that we are living right, and we're living a prayerful life, and we're living a life of penance and charity, humility. Without those, holiness doesn't exist without those things. So we're called to be holy, which means we have to be chaste and prayerful and kind.
Perfect. I think that's a great place to end it. I really appreciate it, Steven. I hope we have you on again. And until then, everyone, again, listen to what he says. Be good, be Catholics, try to lead by example. And let's all try to make it to heaven and bring as many people as we can with us. Steven, until next time, God bless.
You too. Have a good one, Kevin.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.